Hi everyone, I'm Heather Younger, founder and CEO of Customer Fanatics, where we help organizational leaders engage their employees and retain their best talent. I'm also the best-selling author of The 7 Intuitive Laws of Employee Loyalty and the podcast host for Leadership with Heart. Today I want to talk to you about emotional intelligence, and it's because I think it is the driver for most all successful relationships. So, have you ever been that person who gets super frustrated because you feel like you can't influence the situation or the people around you? Have you been told one too many times that you aren't empathetic or compassionate enough? How about somebody does something to you and you can't seem to control your emotions from within and even how it might be exhibited to others? This is what we call emotional intelligence. And it's not the same thing as IQ or the cognitive ability to learn. Daniel Goleman, the prevailing thought leader on emotional intelligence, defines it this way: recognizing our own feelings and the feelings of those around us, motivating ourselves, and controlling our emotions inside of ourselves and within our relationships. Think for a moment. Are you emotionally intelligent? When we grow our toolkits in the emotional and social intelligence space, we change the lives of those around us and ourselves for the better. Let me give you an example. One day when I was previously managing an employee, she came to my office extremely distraught. And it was because she was having a poor interaction with one of her coworkers that she worked with all the time. She felt like he was treating her unkindly and rudely, and she was very emotional. I just happen to be very strong in the empathy space and being aware of the feelings of others and be a very good listener. And so I sat across from her and I just let her talk. I didn't jump to trying to solve the issue. I just let her talk. And I listened very clearly to maybe what the drivers of their discontent might be. And then I was able to coach her towards how she can reframe what it was that was happening with her and this coworker and start to think more positively about how she can control her own emotions within the interaction she has with him. So this is an example of great social intelligence because I was listening to her in an empathetic way and listening to understand what it was she needed. Under self-awareness, those are things like just being aware of how your words and your actions impact those around you. On the bottom part, self-management, it's literally about like controlling emotions in situations and how you're aware of other people's emotions, but how you react to those. On the upper right-hand side, it's that being empathetic and compassionate and listening closely to people. Also being aware of what's happening in teams and within your organization. And on the bottom side, relationship management has a lot to do with your ability to coach others, your ability to influence others. The key with this model is that you can't pass go and collect $200 unless you are emotionally self-aware. And it makes sense, right? Because you cannot be there for the needs of others. You cannot influence other people unless you are aware of your own needs and your own emotions. So it's up to you to foster and to build upon principles of self-awareness first. Get good at that and more aware of that, and then move on and know that you can impact other people's lives when you've done that. What they've also found is that you need self-awareness in order to have emotional awareness of others. It makes sense, right? If you have tons of anxieties and you're frustrated and you're worried all the time, how is it that you can attend to the needs of others who may be having similar feelings or other feelings? You can't be fully present. It also makes sense that you have to have the social awareness and the emotional awareness to be able to be better in the relationship management space. Because that's how you influence other people. You can't influence others if you don't have control of yourself. When we think of emotional self-awareness, some things to keep in mind are you someone who knows your own internal resources, your own strengths, your own limitations? Are you aware of your own personal biases, positive or negative? Do you understand what it is that you can do to impact a situation? When we think about self-management, we're looking at how adaptable we are. Are we achievement-oriented? Do we have a positive outlook on life? And can we control our emotions? A personal story, I realized when I completed my 360 feedback assessment that I wasn't the strongest when I look at all my strengths. My weakest was really in this area. It was being less adaptable, and sometimes the conflict side wasn't so great, so my emotions weren't always in check. An example of this was I was with a company and they went through a couple reorganizations. I was dead in the middle of this reorganization. I was impacted by it multiple times. And I was having a hard time getting it into my head that change was happening and I needed to move forward in a positive way. It's something that I still struggle with today, but it's also something now that I feel like I have more tools to my disposal to be able to work through it and thrive past it. When we think of relationship management, we think of being a great coach and mentor. We think of being able to influence others in the situations around us. We think of being inspirational leaders where people want to move in the direction that we're taking them. But we also think of conflict management. And here's another example, again, of a weakness I found in myself. And we all have to do this. If we're self-aware, remember that's the first place we have to start, then we know that we have to uncover some of the areas that we aren't strongest in. So conflict management is one of the places I tend to be more averse in. I like teamwork, and so sometimes having too much tension may go against that. At least that's the way I felt. What I've realized over the time is that with conflict, sometimes you have to have the healthy tension there in order to innovate and in order to come out on the other side. That's my hope for you too, is that you can come to that if you are one of those people that has a hard time with conflict. If you are someone who knows you have an issue with emotional self-control, why don't, as soon as you feel something coming on, you journal what your triggers are, or right after it happens, journal your triggers and find out how it is you can actually avoid being in the instances where those triggers happen. Also, why don't you go take a jog before you feel it coming on? We sometimes have those hairs in the back of our neck or the breathing or the tension in our jaws. And when we know those things, we can control them by adjusting the situation and the things that we do as a response. If you are someone who's been told that you're not empathetic enough, you're not compassionate enough, you don't listen, why don't you try shadowing someone who you think is a very good listener and just write notes and see what it is they're doing to become more empathetic and better listener to the people that they're interacting with. And another thing you can do is you can also, to make sure that you're listening, you can repeat back to them what it is you heard. Let me make sure I heard what you said. And that's a great way to start out. Number one, that person feels validated because you've heard them. But at the same time, you are going to be more effective, because when you actively listen, you can be more effective when you do. And remember, all of these things drive to the relationship management side, which actually gets you closer to being at the level you want to be from a performance perspective and for results. If you're someone who's not been very good in the conflict management space, kind of like me, bring those disagreements out into the open so that they don't fester underneath and make your emotional control go way off whack, right? Also, maybe when you are in the middle of that, in the conflict management space, maybe you can kind of take a step back and reflect on what happened in the past, what were the triggers, what were your responses, what were your results. All of those things are important to consider when we think of conflict management, because we don't want to replicate what we've done in the past if we didn't get the results that we wanted. Let me give you an example of that. At one of the organizations I worked for, actually the one I talked about before, there were multiple reorgs, and there was a time where my manager at the time brought in a contractor to help me in my work. And I had a lot of negative emotions around that. And I kept some of it in, but I did talk to her about it. And one time I looked at something she had done and it got under my skin so much that instead of letting it fester, I called her into my office and let her know where I was coming from, how I felt, and what it was I was hoping that she would do to rectify the situation so that I could come out of it into a more positive space. Obviously, I was self-aware, but I wanted to make sure that I could influence her in how she was going to move forward. So we reached the end of our emotional and social intelligence discussion. And one of the things I want you to leave with is this. This is not about perfection. This is about continuous improvement. If we expand our toolkits in the emotional and social intelligence space, we can see greater performance at work, we can see more positive relationships at work and at home, we can see that we are reaching our goals and becoming the best versions of ourselves. So since you have been enlightened enough to join this session, I'm giving away an emotional intelligence tip sheet to everybody who joined today. All you have to do is email me at heather@customerfanatics.com and I'll send you your copy right away. Listen, I'm super excited about the work that I do in this space because I do think it drives all positive relationships and results. And so I'm actually putting together a course right now for teams where each team member will be able to talk to me ahead of time, have their own 360 emotional and social intelligence assessment done, and then we will do a roundtable with that team and really be able to dig deep so that we can find the better way, the most effective way to master our emotional and social intelligence. If you have any questions about that or interested in never joining that, you can email me at the same place, heather@customerfanatics.com. In the meantime, go out and be the most emotionally intelligent person you can be.